Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. Today we're going to make a sharpening jig. We made that tool rest and everything for our grinder. The purpose for that was to get parts perfectly straight, and I wanted to make a sharpening jig because we're going to make this hunting knife, and I want to make the same knife over and over. This is the knife that we're going to make. We'll have a brass bolster up here and then just wood the rest of the way back. Again, this is just kind of a rough shape. You know, I'll probably tweak that a little bit when I start shaping it on the grinder. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a template out of some 1/8" mild steel in the shape of the knife that we want. Then from then on, we'll have that template that every time I make that knife, I can get it exact. The only thing that'll make the knives different will be the scales, the handle scales. They'll all have the brass bolsters. They'll all be the same size, same shape, same length of blade, same grind, everything. The only differentiating factor will be that we'll put different scales on them, and if people want to buy these knives, they can choose by the handle scales, but otherwise it's going to be the same hunting knife. Because if you're going to do a knife like that to sell, and you want to sell several of them, you want to make sure that, you know, it's the same knife. And I've been working on this drawing and the plan to make this knife for a while, and I just want to make a knife that I can, you know, it's the same every time. So I can just go through the steps, boom, 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 get it done. And so I can make quite a few of them and not have these knives drag out forever. They'll all be stock removal. I don't want to have to beat them out on the forge. I love working with the forge and blacksmithing on the anvil and pounding a knife out of raw steel. But those are one-off custom knives that I'm not going to make over and over again. I'm making one. Here it is. This is the shape it came, you know, that I made, and blah, blah, blah. So with this hunting knife, I want to be able to make the same knife every time. So we're going to make today we're going to go ahead and we're going to make us a sharpening jig, and we're going to make our template out of steel, so that we have that to measure every time we make one of these knives. We can grind a little, put it up to the template, make sure that it's the same every time. So let's stop yammering and go get to work. done, this will be the shape of every hunting knife that I make. I wanted to make a template. This is just mild steel. So now I have a shape. That way I can make sure every knife comes out the same. I can lay this on my steel, draw it out, and then I have this. Even when I grind it, you're going to want to put this up and make sure everything is the same. You know, put it against it. We won't grind with it against it because we don't want to mess this up. We want it to stay the same. But we can grind, we can check. We can grind, we can check. And this will always remain the same. So when your shape comes out exactly like this, you know you got the knife you want. So we got that done. We got to make a sharpening jig still. My friend Scott's here. He's starting on one of these out of 1095. It's going to be the real deal. So we'll check that out. So guys, here we have a piece of 1095 in the vise. We put some gloves in here to protect that steel because that's going to be our edge. We don't want it chewed up by the vise teeth. As you can see, Scott has traced out the shape, used the template and traced it out on that piece of 1095, and he's getting ready to take the angle grinder and cut off the excess before we go to the belt grinder. So he's getting it pretty close. We sprayed some blue Dykem on there and scribed it with a nail to see just exactly where he still has to grind. So it's getting in there. A little bit has to come off of the bottom of this blade yet. Just a little thick right through there. And round that handle back there with the pommel a little bit more and take out the finger grooves. And we're there. But that's the beauty of having that template that we can use to check our work. You can see the blade is almost identical already. just got to take a little bit off of that blade and then finish up those finger grooves in that and drill us some holes, and that thing will be ready when we get our sharpening jig made, and then we'll put the bevels on it. That'll be a little bit yet. Probably won't get that into this video, but that's the whole idea. That knife will match that template exactly when he's done. So you can lay the knife on there and, you know, scribe out where you need to cut, where you need to grind out, and take it to the scribe, and you're perfect. So very cool. So there's our template, and there's the knife that's got made with the template. So here's our template, and here's actual 1095 steel. Now he wanted to do his handle a little different. He wanted brass back here too, so that's why we have these two pinholes, and our main pinholes here for our main scales are a little closer together, a little shorter, because we're going to have brass here, and then wood here in the center. So he wanted to change it up a little bit, which is fine. The main shape is still identical. The only difference is he wanted to put brass back here, where my production knife will only have the brass up here, and then the rest will be wood. But that's pretty cool to have that template to be able to make every knife the exact same shape. Now his blade, he left the blade a little bit wider this way than this one was. And again, this is kind of a one-off. He's making for his son-in-law. So, but the length, the shape, everything is pretty much identical. So that's pretty sweet how that works. Alright guys, so I made this sharpening jig yesterday. We didn't get that on video. We had a lot going on in here, but I made this jig. It sits on your planting, like on your tool rest like this. Your planting is right here. The knife, these two holes here match up with the hunting knife pinholes that I'm making. We had to make a separate hole because his pinholes are closer together. As I said, he's putting brass back here, but you just take this with your main pinholes, and I've threaded these holes in here so we can take these small bolts and just run them through here and bolt the knife by the tang right to the jig, and then you can set the jig down on the plate and do your bevels. Now the jig works great. The jig is fine. The plate, however, on our grinder over there, the tool rest, when I welded that on, I welded too hot in one spot for too long and I warped that plate a little bit. Well, if you've watched previous videos when we made that plate, I drove the pickup up on it out on the driveway to try to straighten it out. But the dang plate, there's a hump right in the middle, close to the planting, and then it kind of swales out this way and that way. Now that works fine for when you're just like up against, you can set this on here up against the planting and rock your, and make your edges straight and all of that. But you can see in this bevel, we've got this part of the bevel came out perfectly straight, and we didn't video grinding this bevel because, like I say, we just had so much going on. It started getting late. We wanted to test the beveling jig. So I think because of that plate being warped, that's why we come out with this little, because like I say, this part here is straight, but then we get this little swale right here, and we can't have that. That bevel's got to come out nice and straight, clear across there. So I'm going to try to fix this, but I'm not going to try to do it freehand. And I know it's not going to work with that tool rest, with that plate that we used on that tool rest. So what I'm going to have to do, I have another plate of steel and I'll show you that. So we've got this steel plate here that I got from my son. Now it's huge. This thing weighs a ton. It's an inch thick steel plate. It's extremely heavy, but it's flat. It's perfectly flat. So rather than have to build a whole new tool rest, we're gonna put this plate up on here like this. We're gonna come right in the corners, in the very outer corners of this smaller plate, and we're going to drill and tap a couple of holes in here. Then we'll take a couple, just all we need, just a couple of these small bolts. We'll run them up through. We won't drill all the way through this, there's no need to. We'll just drill deep enough to tap that far enough to get this bolt in there. As you can see, that bolt is only going to go maybe halfway into this big plate. So we'll just drill halfway into that plate. I'll tap the threads in there for this, and that way we can just bolt this plate to our existing tool rest when we want to do bevels. Like I said, for all other things, this tool rest is fine for just coming up here and, like you're shaping your knife like this and whatever, or you've got your two brass pieces and you want to make sure they're even, you can come up here and do like that. But for sliding the knife bevel across, this has got to be flat. And so we're going to clean that off, and we're going to drill our holes right here and right here, just in these corners, and drill into that. Tap that. That way we can set that. That thing is so heavy I don't think it would move, even if we didn't bolt it. But just to be sure, we're gonna put those little bolts in here. That way we know that's not gonna move. And then it's perfectly flat. So you can set your jig on here and you know that you're not going to get those, like I showed you, that little swale we have right there at by the plunge grind, because there's a little hump right here in the middle of this plate, and for whatever reason it's causing that that bevel to be off a little bit. And we want to make sure that our bevels are perfectly straight. So so that plate is the answer. I don't want to go down and have to buy more steel. This works fine as a tool rest, but it doesn't work for the beveling jig. So okay guys, that's going to be it for this video. I think we'll make another video where we'll fix that plate and get that where that's perfectly flat so that we can slide our jig on there without it moving at all. And that's what's happening. Our jig is coming up over that little hump, and you just can't have any kind of movement in that plate. I mean, it has to be flat. And I was scratching my head when Scott was here trying to figure out how in the world. I didn't want to have to build a whole new tool rest. Quite a bit of work went into that, and it works great as just a tool rest. It just doesn't work for the beveling. So what we're going to do is put that big plate up there like I showed you, and we'll fix that problem. So, but otherwise, all in all, the template we made works great. The handle is exact. The blade length is exact. The clip point is exact. I mean, everything is exact on this knife. Other than, like I say, he left this a little bit thicker this way. He could have taken a little more off of here, but he elected to just leave it like that. He wants to make a knife for his son-in-law, and a hunting knife for his son-in-law. His son-in-law is a big hunter and that, so I told him, yeah, but he's going to have to do most of the work on it. But, you know, in the long run, you know, two things. I wanted him to see just how much work it takes to make a knife. And two, when he hands that knife off to his son-in-law, I think it'll be very cool for him to be able to say, I made this knife. You know, now I've helped him a little bit here and there because he's never really made a knife before. So I've helped him out a little bit in a few spots and what have you. It's to be expected, but I think he's done a great job so far. He did pretty much all of the shaping and profiling on this knife. So in our next video, we'll go ahead and get that fixed up on that tool rest. We'll get that big plate bolted on there. We'll get it all cleaned up. It's pretty rusty. My son gave that to me, and it's a big chunk of steel. And I was worried it'd be too heavy, but you know what? That's a pretty beefy grinder, and we won't be using it all the time. It'll only be on there for doing bevels, and then it'll come off, and we can do whatever else we need to do with the tool rest that's on there. So thanks for watching, guys. I sure appreciate you tuning in, and we'll finish these bevels up in our next video. We'll get that plate made. We'll get that plate bolted on. We'll get our bevels ground. Then we will anneal this. We'll normalize this a couple of times. We'll anneal it for a couple of hours. We'll get it quenched and hardened and tempered, and get all of that done for Scott. And the next time he comes over, it'll be cleanup work. Then he'll have to start cleaning and sanding and getting all of that stuff done. So that's where we're at. Again, I appreciate you being here. Hey, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do. If you like watching what we do in here, hit that subscribe button. Oh, and you noticed in the video we got an open sign up here. Scott had that laying around. He said he didn't remember where he got it or when he got it ages ago. And he brought it over, thought I might like it, and I do. We tried to put it right up here under the clock, but it's just way too bright. It just blasts, you know. It's way too much to have right there. So I put it over there by the flag on the wall. I think it looks pretty cool in here. It adds to my overall kind of little theme of the shop bar thing we got going on in here. So I appreciate Scott bringing that over. I like it. It looks good up there. We need to kind of hide that wire a little bit more, but I just kind of threw it up there yesterday while he was working on that knife. So looks pretty cool. I like it. It just adds a little bit more flavor to my little shop here. I'll tell you what, this shop has come a long way. My brother and I put up all this paneling and insulation in here and hung new lights and painted this ceiling and put this bar in and all of this. I mean, this was just an unfinished garage a couple years ago when I started my channel and started making knives and that. And it's come a long way. I really like how the shop has come out. We've got our heater, it's warm in here. Things are more organized with all those shelves over there to put all our stuff on, and rack there to hang our belts on, and we got little signs and things in here that just make it, I don't know, a little more homey, you know. It's just a nice, warm feeling little shop, and I really like it. I really appreciate having a shop like this that I can work in and do my videos in. So yes, please subscribe, share these videos with your friends, give me a thumbs up, smash the like button here and there if you would, help me out. We'll get all that other stuff done and we'll get this knife ready for the finish work here in our next video. So thanks for being here again, guys. Take care of yourselves, always be careful when you're working in your shop, use your safety gear and everything. Even if you see me doing something without my safety gear that doesn't look safe, that doesn't mean you should do it that way. You do it the right way, and I try to do it the right way. I don't always, but for the most part, I try to wear my face shield and my mask, and you know, I try to do everything right. I get ahead of myself sometimes and don't do it, but don't follow my example. All right, do it. Try to take care of your eyes and your lungs and everything. And get out to your shop and do something, guys. Build something, make something, tear something up, whatever it is that blows your skirt up. Get out there and do something, and just relax and have some fun. So thanks again for being here, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.